There we go. Good morning. Today is October the 2nd, 2022. And I come across as dark. Yes. Hopefully I look all right. Today's October the 2nd. It is October 10th month of the year. Jeez, man. 3/4 of the year are now behind us, 2022. It doesn't seem like that long ago we were ringing in the new year, especially from the last 2 years. It's really been something. Before I talk about investing at all, I'm going to make a book recommendation. There's a fantastic book. Fantastic book. I think genuinely, I think I've been watching the news, I guess, a little bit this week, paying a little bit of attention to the news and stuff because of Russia and things being blown up. And so I've been paying more attention than I usually would because I try to ignore the news. And watching and listening to the news and looking at world events makes me think back to this book that I've read a couple of times. A fantastic book. It's called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. It's an old book, of course, because Napoleon Hill's been dead for quite some time now. And he is, of course, the person who wrote Think and Grow Rich, and so obviously very, very famous, well-known author. But he has a book called Outwitting the Devil. And if I remember the story correctly, Outwitting the Devil is more like a series of letters or exchanges that he had written that were discovered after his death, if I'm remembering the story correctly. So he didn't actually necessarily mean to publish, this book, but all the same, things came together and he was able to publish Outwitting the Devil. And it's a phenomenal book. In it, Napoleon Hill writes from the perspective of a man who has met the devil. And I can't remember the exact context. They're not in a bar, but it's that kind of a setting, right? Like you've met the devil in a casual setting. And this man, he's kind of like the young and ambitious kid at some company who's eager to move up the ladder, right? Like he's asking for guidance and advice and how do I do the job and what does it take to succeed and et cetera, right? Except he's talking to the devil. And so it's like an interview with the devil. Like if like one of those like Elon Musk or whatever successful person interviews, Grant Cardone, whatever, sitting down and somebody's asking, oh, how'd you do it? And blah, blah, blah. It's like that, except the person being interviewed is the devil. And the person being interviewed is not being asked how to be successful. Instead, he's more being asked how. I guess the question goes like this, right? In a world where it is so easy to be successful, where it is so easy to achieve where it is so easy to achieve a lot, maybe not always what you set out to achieve, but a lot. Why is it that so many people fall victim to the devil's temptations? Why is it that so many people get nothing done? Why is it that so many people waste their time, waste their lives, waste their energy, et cetera, right? How do you, the devil, manage to fool so many people into living a life of quiet despair, right? And it's a very, very, very good book because the devil, he uses the devil sort of as a metaphor for the psychological pitfalls that we are all vulnerable to, right? Whether that is self-doubt or sloppiness, laziness, nation, there's obviously so many different vices and character flaws that we all may fall into, and essentially he's personified those character flaws in the devil and is explaining, how to outwitting the devil, how to overcome these things, right? And one of the things that the devil mentions that people do wrong in the book, and it's interesting because it's paralleled by some of Napoleon Hill's other books, is they speak about the devil. The devil in the book speaks about people not thinking accurately, how they miss their mark, they overlook things, they ignore important details or context. And as a result of their not thinking about things accurately, they end up adrift. I believe that's the term he uses, the drift, kind of wandering away from where they're trying to go, right? So fantastic book about personal development and personal growth, and about kind of the things to watch out for. And so I'm watching, I'm listening to, I'm taking in the news. Putin blew up some pipeline outside of Denmark there, and blah 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 blah. That's the news. Those are the headlines, and it occurs to me that there is no exercise of accurate thinking going on there, right? Like, for example, why would Putin blow up a pipeline that he sells gas through when he has a spigot on his end? He can just turn it off, right? Like, just explain to me. It's like if you were at your house and instead of going downstairs and shutting the water off, you're going to rip all the plumbing out of the house. It's like, that's not the move of a homeowner. That's the move of a crackhead who wants to steal your copper pipes, right? So accurate thinking, right? And the British Journal for Medicine, I think that's right, came out this week with their studies. It actually might have been last week, with their findings. And after investigating post COVID-19 vaccine menstruation, they found that there is, in fact, a link between the vaccine and delayed menstruation, an average of 1 day, according to their report. So, I mean, I'm not a woman, so I don't know. An average of 1 day sounds pretty okay. I mean, obviously, if you're not the average and you're an outlier and you get like a 10-day delay or something, that might be kind of scary. But according to their findings, an average of 1 day, and they said, of course, they need to do more studying and to really figure out what is going on, right? Now, accurate thinking tells us, of course, that you probably should have done that study before you made it mandatory for everybody to get these vaccinations, but you didn't, right? And I think that this is very key, important thing, at least for me. I'm going to talk about myself. I sometimes get discouraged. I get discouraged looking at the world, and I think I'm not moving fast enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't understand well enough. Other people have done things that were just such an advantageous time and place. You can't really compete with those, or, just as an example. And I really think the man's amazing, but Elon Musk, right? If you're not aware, the thing he did that got him all this money was he founded X.com. If you don't know what X.com is, before the internet was the internet, it was the first, or one of the first, websites that allowed you to go onto the internet and exchange US dollars for Canadian dollars, or British pounds for Canadian dollars, or whatever, right? It was an exchange website. Now, that's, we all think of Elon Musk as an incredibly smart guy, and he obviously is. But if you think about it, that's not a very smart idea. It's a pretty basic, simple idea, right? What made Elon Musk so successful, obviously, aside from the fact that he obviously has a gift for executing on his ideas, is his timing, right? The internet was this new thing, right? And we see that with a lot of things, right? Where there are people who are in the right place at the right time. And you got to do a lot of the right things to be in the right place at the right time, but all the same, you see that, right? And so I look at that oftentimes, and I think to myself, the world is full of smart people. I meet them all the time. I mean, it's full of dumb people too, but it's full of smart people. I meet them all the time. And, maybe you can't I don't even want to say compete, because compete's not the right word, but that you can't necessarily attain that level of success. And that's a very self-defeating mindset or mentality, one that I have to work hard to deal with when confronted with it. And I really think that thinking about things accurately helps with this. And the reason why is because, if you look at the world and you look at your average person and how they're doing and what they're doing, and then you draw conclusions or like trends away from that, then that's a very dangerous thing that's going to throw you off track, because those people are not on a good track, so to speak, right? That accurate thinking piece, most people don't have, right? Many, 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 many people in the West, I guess, are watching the news and going, yeah, that makes sense. Of course, Putin blew up the pipeline because he's a psychopath, right? And they're not really thinking about things. And hey, you know what? Maybe he did. I mean, I don't actually know. I'm just saying it seems kind of suspect that he would do such a thing, unless he's actually insane, right? And that's the thing, is like, maybe he is insane. I don't know. But what I do know is, like, Joe Biden can't remember where he is, right? So, like, if we want to talk about people whose mental capacity is not very good, we have Joe Biden. He's got very poor mental capacity. If you want to tell me that Putin does too, and so he's willing to shoot himself in the foot, okay, fine. Then we've got two senile men who have no business leading these countries. Probably that's not the case, because in Russia, Russia's not like America. In Russia, if you start slipping, there's somebody there who will take you out, right? Like, there are other oligarchs who will totally kill Putin so they could have his spot, right? So the idea that Putin has lost his faculties seems unlikely, right? Whereas in America, obviously, like, there's an army of people who are devoted to keeping this dude safe no matter what, even protecting him from the stairs of his own plane. So I don't know. Accurate thinking is a very important thing. I'd highly recommend the book Outwitting the Devil, especially, again, just because I think it's easy to look around the world and be confronted with the 90% of people who aren't really doing very much, and then question whether or not it's going to be possible for you to do a lot, right? And that's the absolute wrong way to look at it, because at least of the 90% of people who ain't doing much, at least 75% of those people are doing nothing at all. Like, they're not even, there's no effort being put forth at all. And you've, of course, met these people. You know who they are. I'm happy to say that real estate investing is not making me rich as quickly as I would like. Nothing ever does, really. But, I mean, it's having the desired effect for sure. And there's an old saying, it is, we overestimate what we can do in a day and greatly underestimate what we can do in a year. And I think that that's very true. Speaking of years, this is 2022. Did you know that 2022 is on record now to be the worst year for stock market performance since the Great Depression? Did you know that? That's 100 years, 100-year-old record, pretty much. I mean, the Great Depression, I guess 90 years ago, technically, 92 years ago, something like that. But yeah, on track to be the worst year on record for the stock market. Now, of course, the stock market is important. The stock market is a tool that is used by financial institutions for a wide variety of reasons and purposes. And so when the stock market is down, that can be bad for capital. It can be bad, obviously, for business and the economy. It could be good for investors or bad for investors, depending on who you are and what side of the equation you're on. Right now, if you are a person who does not invest in stocks and does not take advantage of their TFSA's ability to hold stocks tax-free, this is the time to buy. There has never, I mean, I'm not saying this day, because, this is not investment advice, right? But this is the time to buy. Sometime in what is going on right now is the time to buy. Chances are, if we're in a trough similar to the Great Depression, then we're approaching or at the bottom of the market, and there's nowhere to go but up from here. And in a year or two from now, assuming obviously that Joe and Putin there don't destroy the world, then the stock market will probably increase. And they probably won't, right? Because let's face it, if Joe Biden gives the order to launch nukes, chances are nobody's listening to him. I don't know if the people will listen to Putin, but I could tell you a history story from I can't remember if it's the early 1980s or the late 1970s, but anyways, in Russia, the order was given to launch nukes, and the general was like, nope, I'm not doing that. And turns out that the order was wrong. He shouldn't have launched the nukes, so he was right, and hey, saved the world. So it was like a computer glitch, just so we're clear. It's not like the president of Russia tried to nuke somebody, but all the same, right? He didn't know that. He got an order saying launch the nukes, and he said, no, this doesn't make sense. And that's something that's very important for everybody to understand when the media is trying to hype you up and make you afraid, is that the world is not a video game, right? Some asshole, regardless of the offices, and even if it's the Oval Office, does not just push the button and nukes are launched. That's not how the world works. There's a lot of people in that chain who all have to be stupid and crazy and essentially suicidal to want to have to launch those nukes. And it's not to say that we can't get together 10 of those people to launch some nukes. I'm sure that we can. I'm sure that we absolutely can. But it's just to say, we're maybe not as close to the brink as certain people who live off of fear would like us to believe, right? Now, with the stock market being down, most investment vehicles cryptocurrencies are also down. And so, it's not a terrible time to buy them either. Obviously, on the other end, we have real estate, which is really not down. And we have the US dollar, right? Like foreign exchange. So the British pound sterling this week is at its lowest against the US dollar, I think since the US dollar left the gold standard, something like that. So, very, very long time anyways. Canadian dollar is down quite a bit as well against the US dollar. Although really down is not the right term. Probably neither of these currencies are down. The US dollar is probably up because people put money into the US dollar when things are uncertain because, again, that lack of accurate thinking, they're not really thinking very hard. They should put in gold or silver stocks or something other than US dollars, but this is what people do, right? It is a fantastic, fantastic, fantastic time for you to take some of your liquid assets and turn them into those things. It really is. There's a lot of fear. The economy is, I don't even know what the term is, but the economy is not very good, right? It's kind of stop and start and and things are slow all over the place. And that's usually a good indicator. That's a great time to invest if you've got the extra money laying around. Wholesaling. Obviously, a wholesale deal is when a prospective investor negotiates a property under contract with a provision or clause to assign that contract if they choose to before the closing date. An assignment is the sale of a contract for a set price for a third party to fulfill the contract. So if I negotiate with someone to purchase their house for $500,000, and then I go to Elias and I say, hey, Elias, would you like to buy this house for $600,000? You're going to pay me $100,000 for my contract, and then you're going to fill the contract for $500,000, right? That is a completely legal transaction as long as there is an assignment clause in your agreement of purchase and sale. And in that scenario, I've bought the house for $500,000, paying the original seller. Or sorry. I've agreed to pay the original seller $500,000. They're happy. They've agreed to this. I've now found a buyer who's actually willing to pay $600,000 for the property, right? And I've explained to him that, hey, I have the exclusive right to purchase this property for $500,000, but I will sell that exclusive right to you for $100,000 so that you have a total cost of $600,000 for the purchase of this property. The final buyer, Elias in this case, is happy with that arrangement. And so he pays me $100,000. On closing day, I do not go to the close. I have given the agreement of purchase and sale and assigned it via contract to Elias, and he will now show up on the closing date with the funds to complete the transaction and buy the property from the first party who was selling it, right? That is a wholesale deal, right, from top to bottom, right? Obviously, to do these types of deals, right, you need to be finding properties at or below market value that can command either a market value price and were bought for below market value, or can be contracted at market value price, but can command a premium for some reason. So perhaps you have knowledge that the seller doesn't have, right? You know something about the value of that property that the seller doesn't know, and so therefore you can negotiate a price with the seller that seems fair to them, right? That is quote unquote market price at the time, but you know something is about to change or happen or be made aware to the greater public that would then value the property for more. Generally speaking, what you want to do is get your discount. The money in a wholesale deal, like most real estate investments, really, is made in the buying, right? That is, if we find the property, go back to my original example, $500,000, $600,000. We find the property that's worth $600,000 to our final buyer, right? To the person that is being assigned to. And we're negotiating with that seller. Obviously, if we do a bad job negotiating and the seller wants $550,000, we've made less money than if they only want $500,000. And obviously, if we can get them down to $450,000, we've made more money, right? Now, once I've got this contract, this agreement of purchase and sale signed, and now we're waiting to close, I no longer have an opportunity, right? I no longer have an opportunity to change the pricing. Excuse me. The only thing I could do now is raise the price, right? And obviously that comes with a bunch of challenges because supply and demand, right? Especially because the best way to wholesale, that is the way that is easiest in terms of cost of goods sold, right, is to sell a product that is profitable, right? And the reason why it's most valuable to sell or to assign these properties that are valuable, right, is because when the properties are valuable, you don't need to persuade the buyer to purchase the property. The property speaks for itself. The numbers speak for itself, right? To go back to my example, $500,000 purchase price, $600,000 assignment. Let's just say that property cash flow $60,000 a year. This is a very ideal example, but all the same, right? So we're paying we've agreed the seller is going to sell for $500,000. We have a buyer we're going to assign to for $600,000. This property is cash flowing $60,000 a year, right? So really easy numbers. That's 10% of the purchase price. It's cash flowing per year. Well, that's a no-brainer, right? Anybody who's an investor who understands investing well knows that if they're getting back 10% of their overall investment in cash flow every year, that's a winner. That's basically a business. That's past a real estate investment, right? Passive investments don't usually perform that well. And so you're not going to have trouble selling that thing. In fact, you may end up in a situation where you have multiple people competing to try and buy it at $600,000. They may even offer you $650,000 or $700,000, right? Because really, if that property was returning 5% of my investment as cash flow every year, which would make it a $1.2 million property instead of a $600,000 property, a lot of investors would still be happy with that, right? Especially when we consider the four streams, cash flow is only one of them. So if you're looking at cash flow as 5% of your initial investment and maybe passive appreciation as 3%, we're now at 8% return every year. And then, there's also obviously the active appreciation and the principal recapture, right? Well, you're not going to get any active because let's just assume you don't have to do anything with this property. But principal recapture, right? I mean, you own the property, $600,000. It's going to smack a $408,000 mortgage on there. That's going to be getting paid like $2,000 a month. So you're collecting $1,000 a month. It's $12,000. 12,000 over 600 is like, I don't know, 1% or whatever. But you see what I'm saying, right? You're getting up to a 9 or 10% return. That sells itself to your prospective buyer. You don't need to. You need to spend money marketing it in the sense that you need to put that in front of people's eyeballs. But you don't need to spend time trying to convince your buyer that property is a good deal. It's obvious that it's a good deal, right? Now, if we take that same scenario, we are negotiating with the seller. So we're still going to sell for $600,000, but we're negotiating with the seller, and the seller won't let go of the property for anything less than $575,000. Okay. Now we only have a $25,000 margin in there, right? Well, obviously, we're going to make a lot less money. Now, if everything else about the deal is still the same, you make $25,000, which is still very respectable for 1 or 2 months' work, and you assign the property, and you're good to go, right? But let's say some of the other details are different, right? So now we've negotiated 575, we're going to sell for 6, but the property doesn't cash flow $60,000 a year. It cash flows, I don't know, let's say $10,000 a year, so quite a bit less, right? That's going to be a harder sell, right? The return is not as good. Now, how could you make the return better? Well, that'd be easy, right? Like, let's just say that low cash flow is there, regardless of the price that we've negotiated. So the 575 or the 500, but we're either way, we're going to take the lower, the $10,000 a year cash flow. Well, if I have a $500,000 property that cash flows $10,000 a year, and I wanted to sell it for $600,000, maybe that doesn't give me a very good return, but I could discount it to 550, right? Which, $50,000 is not going to change the return hugely, but it's going to make it look better. And ultimately, the numbers only need to be so good, right? That's an option that I have to keep that property marketable. Obviously, my second scenario where I paid $575,000 for that property, right? The $10,000 of cash flow, I'm going to sell it for $600,000. I can't reduce my price. So if the buyer of the assignment now says, hey, this property doesn't really make enough money, right, to justify me paying this premium to own it, you're now stuck trying to convince the seller that they want the property. And for anybody who's ever done sales, a good salesman does not convince his customer that they want the product. The product is desirable to the customer already. A good salesman is only understanding how and why this product fits into the customer's life, and then how to get them to say yes to the want that they already have, right? That's essentially the job of a salesman. And you will find that there are salespeople who will try and sell you stuff you don't want, and they will even succeed sometimes. It does happen, but they're few and far between. That's not a very winning strategy. It's a much easier strategy to sell people stuff they already want, right? And so this is really the big challenge with wholesaling, right? There are there are structural business costs with wholesaling that don't really exist with BRRRR investing, for example. If you're a BRRRR investor or just a buy and hold investor, your marketing costs come down to marketing your properties for tenants, right? That's about all of your marketing costs. Maybe if you're getting advanced, you might put up bandit signs or do some sort of paid mail or email campaign to try to reach people and buy properties off market. And at which point you're kind of dipping your toes in the wholesale territory, or at least behaviors anyways. But by and large, right, those marketing and other business costs are something that wholesalers deal with that other types of real estate investing, maybe with the exception of flipping, doesn't really have to wrestle with, right? And so this is something that the wholesaler needs to think about, right? What is the cost of my per prospect, right? If I go out and I spend $500 to market this deal, right? Again, we got $100,000 spread in my ideal scenario, so we can afford $500, maybe even $1,000, right? Go out and market that property and find people who match the criteria of buyers of this type of property, right? That's an ongoing expense that I have to factor in, right? I'm going to have to factor that cost in. There are legal fees. There are always legal fees, but there are legal fees that you have to account for, right, with a wholesale deal, because you have to do the agreement of purchase and sale, which is pretty straightforward. Once you have the agreement, once you can really just change the addresses. But you might want to get one done up by a lawyer. The standard ORIA form is pretty good, and you could definitely do it there. But if you want to, you could also get a special one that costs you a bit of money. And then you are going to need the assignment contract. That ORIA, does ORIA have a standard assignment contract, actually? You know what? I'm not sure. I should know. I've looked through all their contracts. I'm not sure. Usually, at least in an American context, assignment contracts are drawn up by a lawyer. So you may have to pay a few $1,000s to get that set up the first time for the first deal, right? And then your real cost is marketing to sellers to locate and find sellers, and marketing to buyers to locate and find buyers, and matchmaking, right? That's really what you're doing. This type of investment is kind of more active than the others, because you're actively sitting there trying to find buyers, trying to find sellers, churning through them, right? And then trying to match them through properties that you control, right? So you can extract maybe not the right word, but so that you put the deal together, that deal has a certain amount of value, and so you're going to be compensated for putting together this valuable deal, right? And a wholesaler, or I guess the people who make the best wholesalers typically are people who understand where investors are coming from, because that's your target market, right? That's who you're selling to. And so really doing that important, I've said this so many times, but getting your reps in and really doing the analyses is what allows you to be successful at this. Now, not every person who wholesales necessarily needs to do the analyses. If they're working with the team, maybe somebody else on the team takes up that weight. But at the end of the day, you need to be watching the market and understand what's developing in the marketplace, as well as what are good and bad prices for things, right? So that you know what prices to offer and where you can and cannot make money, right? And the whole idea is that you're going to find a deal. Let's go back to my example. $500,000 to buy, $600,000 to sign, making $60,000 a year. Like I said, that deal, in theory, because these are kind of crazy numbers, that deal is in theory worth somewhere between $600,000 and $1.2 million. It's worth somewhere in between there, right? Now we're selling it for $600,000. That means that the person we're selling it to can maybe turn around and sell it for $7,000, because it's worth somewhere between $6 and $1.2, right? You as the wholesaler have to not care about that. Right? You as the wholesaler are not attempting to extract all of the value from the property. In fact, it is your goal to leave value in there so that your buyer, right, the end user, the holder, the borrower, whatever they are, is making money off their investment, right? And ideally has made money the day they signed the contract with you, right? Like the perfect wholesale is this is the perfect wholesale. We have a house has a $750,000 market value. Okay, that's what it can sell for on the open market. The seller, for whatever reason, wants to sell quickly. They're willing to sell it to you for $600,000. Okay, so there's $150,000 spread in there. You turn around and wholesale that property for $100,000. So now the property's total cost is $700,000 to the buyer, but it is in the market where it's worth $750,000. So that buyer now has made $50,000 the moment they spend the $100,000 with you, which is, of course, a 50% return on investment on the assignment fee. Everybody could feel good about that, right? That is technically the perfect wholesale deal, right? It's a win-win-win. All parties are getting what they want, right? The seller sold their house either hassle-free or quickly or without having to deal with, 100 people being dragged through the house by realtors, whatever it is they're trying to avoid by selling it to you. Right? You obviously made your $100,000 on the spread, and your buyer has bought a property with $50,000 of equity growth built right into it. That's a home run. And you will find that a property like that is sellable to serious investors because they'll sit down, they'll just do the math, and they'll say, oh yeah, I pick up $50,000 by buying this. Even if I sell it in 6 months, I'll have made $50,000. And the math is a little bit shiesty in Ontario because of land transfer tax, but that should be profitable to any investor, right? That should approximately, at $600,000 for at $600,000 for property. I'm trying to think what the land transfer tax on that would be. Yeah, you should still profit on that. You'd make like $30,000. So, or maybe you'd make $20,000. I might be doing the math wrong there, but you would make a couple tens of thousands of dollars, and so all parties should be happy. And of course, if we take the taxes out, you paid $50,000, and taxes are your concern because, well, how much taxes you pay are going to be down to how good you and your accountant are, isn't it? Right? And so some people will feel the hurt of those taxes more or less depending on their, financial acumen, right? And so really that's wholesaling, right? We're trying to set up win-win deals for all parties involved, right? And the way that we're doing that is by looking for discounts on properties that we can then take some of the discount and put in our pocket and then pass the rest of the discount on to the person who's actually putting up the capital, right? And the reason you do this is very straightforward, right? You don't have the capital to go through with this deal, or you're so good at finding deals that while you had the capital for the first couple, you no longer have any capital. So this is a way to get capital from other people while helping them to take advantage of your deals. And of course, you're finding deals that are very profitable. And so it's a win-win for everybody. And the smartest investors are obviously doing this to buy more properties, right? Like, maybe I wholesale 5 properties, 50 grand a piece. Now I've got 250. I buy the 6th one, then I do it again for 5 more, buy the 12th one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? That's kind of the process. And obviously people have different things they need and want out of things. Now, wholesaling, I would say, is it's both an advanced type of real estate investing in a sense, because it works best for people who understand real estate investors in the real estate investing market. And so having a little bit of experience and knowledge of the market will definitely help you to succeed in doing wholesale deals. However, wholesale is easy in the sense that it does not require a lot of startup capital, right? One of the major objections that a lot of people have about real estate investing, certainly the people I talk to anyways, so, I can't afford that. It costs too much money. How do you do that? I don't know. I don't even know where to begin. People think about the money, And obviously in Toronto, where your average down payment is going to be in the $200,000 to $400,000 range. Yeah, I mean, saving up $200,000 is something I've never done in my life. I don't know how you save $200,000. I've made $200,000, but I don't know how you save it. Like $10,000 a year, kind of a thing. Like, how do you? It's when you really start to think about it, saving $20,000. Okay, let's $200,000. Sorry. Okay, let's say you make, I don't know. Let's say after tax you make $100,000. So already we're talking about people who are quite successful, but okay. After tax, make $100,000, and let's say you live off 60, and so you save 40, right? You're still saving for 5 years to get that $200,000 down payment, right? And so for your average person, obviously it's very difficult, right? Wholesale allows you to skip that, to avoid that. One of the big problems is people think that investing, stocks, real estate, crypto, all these things, they think it's about saving. It's not about saving. It's about leveraging. It's about either leveraging what you know, leveraging what you have, leveraging debt, leveraging goodwill, whatever it is, it's about leveraging. If you know that something is a good investment, and this is where really mindset and confidence are big, 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 big factors. Kobe Bryant said, when asked about investing by fellow basketball players, and they've gone on the record as saying this now that he's passed away. Kobe Bryant said, why not put all your eggs in one basket? Listen, if you know you have a good basket, put all your eggs in that basket. And hey, if something happens to the basket, make more eggs. That was Kobe Bryant's advice. It's similar. It rhymes with what Warren Buffett said, which is, why not put all your eggs in one basket and watch it really well? Right? Actually, no, I think it was Charlie Munger who said it, but either way, Berkshire Hathaway boys, right? And Elon Musk has said a similar thing, right? And at the end of the day, I'm going to pick on Elon Musk, actually, because X.com is a perfect example of this. Elon Musk basically dropped everything in his life, his schooling, his I think a lot of his social life, everything was devoted to X.com. And then X.com sold for however many billions of dollars, and him and Peter Thiel and the other guy got filthy, stinking rich. And of course, Elon Musk, being just a masochistic maniac, decided to take all that money and dump it into Tesla and SpaceX, and both of them almost went broke in 2007, 2008, to the point where he was like, I mean, he wasn't broke like maybe I might be broke if I were to make mistakes financially, but he was broke in the sense that he's gone from billionaire to maybe like a couple $1 million there. And he's surfing couches and stuff because he doesn't even have a home. He's working that hard. And obviously it pays off for him, right? And obviously those have paid off for him. Those took him from basically a normal guy. I mean, maybe a little bit more affluent than a normal guy, right? When he was 20. X.com made him a billionaire. And then Tesla and SpaceX made him the richest man in the world. But that was all by putting all of his eggs in one basket. He wasn't diversifying. That's a whole load of crap. Because what does diversification actually mean? It means put your money in places you don't understand, right? By definition, we have to focus on things because we're human. We have a finite amount of bandwidth and knowledge and time. And so focus, understand something well, and then invest or bet on it, right? And that's something really that how am I trying to phrase what I want to say? That's something that you have to come to terms with if you want to really have the massive financial success, right? So you have to figure out how to mitigate the risks, right? Avoid the pitfalls as best as you can, and then maximize on your returns by betting on yourself and betting on bigger and more focused, right? That's what we all need to do to get ahead as investors, right? And so if real estate is that thing that you're going to focus on, right? Wholesaling is a fantastic tool to use. It's fantastic, not just because it doesn't require capital, which is one of those big stumbling blocks that people say is going to stop them and that they worry about. But it's also fantastic because it's focused, right? If your goal ultimately is to be a real estate investor, you might start out wholesaling, or you may supplement at some points with wholesaling. But ultimately, your goal is to get back towards buy and holds, right? And wholesaling may allow you to do that. It also allows you to network. It's also going to allow you to meet industry professionals. It's also going to allow you to meet lawyers and accountants and all the various people who are involved in this market segment that make a deal happen, right? And it's going to allow you to gain knowledge, and not just that, connections with investors, right? You think for every person that you sell a wholesale deal to where they make an instant $50,000, right? Are you going to be able to call that person later and maybe ask them a question or two? Are they going to be happy to take your phone call or not? Those people are all going to be happy to answer your phone call. Your phone calls might be worth $50,000 to them, maybe more, right? And so that's how you have to really look at it. And you've got to understand as well, another mindset thing, right? Is as a wholesaler, because a wholesaler is cold calling, right? Wholesaling is not necessarily the most comfortable job in the sense of lots of people don't like sales flow, sales interaction, sales. And if you don't like those things, wholesaling is challenging because that's basically what it is, right? But if you're getting in there and you're doing those sales, you have to understand the mindset has to be, I am bringing, or I am the value, right? That there is a deal here that is going to make a lot of money for the investors, and it is because I am putting it together. And so you may not want to speak to me, but that's just because you don't know how valuable I am, right? And what I'm bringing to the table. Now, it's not to confuse that with arrogance. Lots of people might, right? Don't confuse that with arrogance or what's the term? I'm not sure what the term is, but like failing to listen, right? A lack of humility, I guess. Don't confuse that with arrogance or a lack of humility, right? You're speaking to people, hopefully, who are successful, perhaps more successful than you. Obviously, there's a time to speak and there's a time to listen. But it is about remembering that you bring value to the table, and potentially a lot of it, right? I know for myself, I have a history investing, a lot of different things, stocks, cryptos, real estate. I've even tried some multi-level marketing, baby, just so that we're clear, right? Everybody makes mistakes, so right, you do it all. And I remember this one gentleman I when I was doing the crypto investing, I advised and I guided and I sold and ultimately put together this deal for this gentleman that ended up being worth almost $500,000. And for me, $500,000 is still a lot of money. I don't know about you. Maybe you don't think it's a lot of money. Certainly he was really happy to make all that money, but didn't necessarily, that wasn't life-changing money for him. But you put together this deal, right? And what I've come to realize since doing years ago. But what I've come to realize since putting that deal together was that really, even though he had the money and the success, I was the value, because I was the thing that took his money and success and was able to multiply it, right? And you too are and can be that value, right? But you've got to bring that knowledge to people and have the confidence to, in a respectful and blah, blah, blah way, in a pro-social way, but have the confidence to guide people, and then obviously not take their BS, because people, especially when it comes to money. People will BS about how they know this and they know that and blah, 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 right? But have the patience and the knowledge to really guide people and help them towards better decision making, right? And that will in turn reward you. I was rewarded, for helping him make that money for sure. Both financially, like I was compensated, but also, there's that confidence piece of here's a thing that you've done, right? And so I can always look back on that as an accomplishment, say, oh yeah, remember when you did this, right? So your mission as a person, forget investing completely, just as a person, is help people. I'm not saying, go out there and join the Red Cross or the mission or anything. I'm just saying, life is about helping people. What are you going to do? Lay in bed all day? You help people, your friends, your family, your loved ones, your kids, your wife, your husband, you help people. That's what life is about, right? And those of us, there's a lot of things you can do in the world, right? Because you can obviously be a parasite like Joe Biden, right? There's a perfect example. And I'm not picking on Joe Biden because I don't like him. All politicians are. They provide nothing of value, right? They don't. But just by definition, right? Like the milkman delivers me milk, but what does Joe Biden do for me? Nothing. He steals from me for his pet projects. Essentially, that's what the government is. It's a thing that takes, right? Businesses build and create. Government takes and destroys. That's kind of the nature of it. And, you sit here and debate it. Well, they do some good things. Yeah, sure, of course. And businesses do some bad things. There's no question. Life is not about absolutes, right? But when you look at the fundamental functions of these things, one is about creating things and one is about taking things from the people who create them. That's just, it is what it is, right? So those people, there are parasites in the world. And I'm not going to lie to you, parasites succeed. Sometimes parasites are wildly successful. Obviously, he is a great example of that, but there are lots and lots of people who are thieves, who are, con artists, who are fraudsters, who use the government to get ahead and abuse people and et cetera, et cetera. All that stuff is true. But on average, the people who get ahead and are the most successful are the people who've helped the most people. And I will give you a perfectly clear point. I'll go back to my boy Elon Musk, talk about him all the time, right? He founded X.com. Very simple, very basic idea that any of us could have thought of, but we weren't there at that place at that time to do it. He did. And all that he did was he helped people move money from one country to the other for cheaper. And it turns out that is worth billions of dollars because there are lots of businesses that depend on this. And so he helped tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people with this service, millions of people, in fact, because X.com went on to become PayPal. Possibly even billions of people at this point. Doesn't matter. Sells all that, creates Tesla and SpaceX. Now he helps people who want electric vehicles for one reason or another, whether you think they're a good idea or not, that is not really relevant. People want them, right? He helped them get them, helped design them. Not only did he help design, he helped make them desirable, which, in the year 2022, where Tesla is one of the top cars that you could own, sounds kind of funny, but you've got to remember, right? 20 years ago, electric cars were literally a joke, right? He helped the entire world realize, okay, these things maybe aren't such a joke. Not only are they not such a joke, they're desirable and they're good. And maybe they're even advantageous. Same thing with SpaceX, right? He's helping. First of all, he can get cargo into low Earth orbit for about 1/100th the cost of the NASA Space Shuttle program. So even, I was just talking about the government, basically stealing. That's what NASA is, part of the government, right? And they do. That's what they do. But he has reduced the amount they need to steal from us by 1/100th. That's a win. Obviously, they don't steal from us here in Canada, but you understand what I mean, right? So there's an example. His businesses have helped the world immensely, right? If I pick on Robert Kiyosaki, and I'm going to ignore completely the Rich Dad Company because that's a whole other thing. I don't remember how many units he has now. Is it like 7,500 or something like that? He has 7,500 units. There are 7,500 people, families, couples, single parents who have a roof over their head today because Robert Kiyosaki was willing to buy a place for them to live and then sell it to them piecemeal month by month. He helps those people, right? And so, again, it's by helping people, by being of service to other, I sound a little bit like a religious nut, right? Because Christian people like to talk about like serving others, right? But nonetheless, and there's nothing, just because you're Christian doesn't mean you're a religious nut, but I'm just saying that's what I sound like. Serving others is the thing that really gets you ahead, and figuring out how best to serve others is really the thing that does it, right? And so wholesaling, unlike some of the other forms of of real estate investing, probably why I don't talk about it as much, is much more about being of service to other investors than really anything else, right? And understanding how the market works and what the market is looking for so that you can sell it to people, right? And if you can understand that, you can be a successful wholesaler. Now, obviously, maybe there's the business piece with marketing this that you maybe will not be able to figure out. But I mean, the great news is again, if it's about helping people, then that means other people can help you too, right? And so maybe if you're deficient at one or more of those required skills, right, you can lean on some people who aren't, and together you can be successful. I think one of the most powerful things that really, I don't know what has happened. I wasn't alive before to know what society used to be like, but it seems to me like something that's fundamentally different about our modern time is that people have become incredibly individualistic and atomistic. And I'm a very individualistic person. I'm very much so. I'm not much of a conformist, and I never was. And it got me into trouble when I was in school, and it got me in trouble when I was a young man. But I don't think conformity is necessarily a very good thing, but I do think that teamwork is very valuable. And it feels to me like people have been taught not to cooperate, not to be on the team. I mean, if I look at like the transgender thing right now, and I don't have a strong opinion on it really, because I don't care what people do with their lives as long as they leave me alone. That's the only part that I care about. Don't tell me what to call you. I'll call you what I want. Otherwise, you do you, right? But when I look at those people and I look at kind of that entire movement, right, that whole thing seems like this like really heavy focus on like, I think the word narcissism is overused, but on this narcissistic focus on the individual as if the rest, everybody else doesn't matter. And we are strongest working as a team because we are not gods. We're not super saiyans. We're not perfect. We're people. We're flawed and fallible. You know, we make mistakes. We make bad decisions. We do stupid things. It is the nature of being a person, right? And so teamwork allows for your peaks to cover someone else's valleys, right? And their peaks to cover yours. And so I think that in business in general, teamwork is very valuable. Elon Musk, just go back to him one last time, had Peter Thiel and the other guy. I wish I remembered the other guy's name because I do know who he is. But he had Peter Thiel and the other guy. They are the founders of X.com, right? Tesla, he's got those other two guys. I forget their names. And SpaceX, I don't know the names of any of the guys. But I know that there are guys. There are guys, right? And one of the things that people say about working with Elon Musk is that Elon Musk is not very social. He's not very personable. He's not necessarily super duper friendly, but he's very, very good at managing his teams to get them to accomplish the task, because he can't do it by himself, right? And nobody can. And none of these, success, even in the small scale, usually involves multiple people. Certainly, if you're just going to be like a micro investor, like it's just going to be you're at least going to have a team with an accountant on it, probably a lawyer, unless you're your own accountant, a lawyer on it, right? You might have a realtor or two or three on it, right? You might have a guy, I don't know, Robert Kiyosaki, Grant Cardone, even myself, whatever, like somebody you go to kind of help keep you motivated or to refocus you, whatever. Maybe it's a priest or a pastor or an imam, whatever it is, right? But there's going to be a team around you. Maybe your wife, right? She's going to support you. Maybe she takes care of the kids, or she takes care of your laundry, or she's, keeping your house clean so you don't have to work. Whatever it is, right? There's a team that you're going to be a part of. And your goal should probably be, regardless of what kind of success you want in investing and in real estate investing, grow that team. Grow that team. And, really to recap today, grow your team, right? Really invest in some of the relationships that are going to help you get to the next level, right? Understand your market, right? That's what you need to do if you're going to be a wholesaler. And it's true of any kind of investing. Practice accurate thinking. As I said right at the start of today's seminar, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Fantastic, fantastic book. Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Accurate thinking. We have an epidemic of people who do not think accurately about things, and it's causing problems, right? And obviously, if you're gonna fall into the same lazy traps that they do, it's gonna cause problems for you too, right? So accurate thinking is of course very, very key. Mindset, of course, always mindset. And then the last thing, which is not something you need to know, but just a reminder I want to make. This year, 2022, is on track to be the worst performing year for the stock market since the Great Depression. That's almost 100 years. If you are not a person who invests in stocks, I understand, I get it. They can be kind of confusing. It can be overwhelming, And there's an entire industry built on making it confusing just so that they can sell you investment products. All the same, if you don't take advantage, this is a fantastic time to look into setting up a TFSA and buying some stocks in it. Because when you're at the bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. I mean, barring World War III and all that, right? Notwithstanding those things, there's nowhere to go but up. And we're at a very interesting moment in history. Usually when the stock market troughs like this, you don't know that it is doing that. You don't know that it's the bottom. And we don't know. It could fall a lot further from where it is right now, but it's fallen a long way already. And chances are, once you're tied with the Great Depression, are you really going to fall that much further? Granted, the money you put in there might take 5 years before, the stock market recovers. That sort of thing is true because the Great Depression lingered for years. That's all true. But if you're looking forward, that is definitely something that you should be looking into in the next couple of weeks or so. If you've got the capital available, when I say capital available, I'm not talking about $100,000 here. Like if you've got $5,000, which is the contribution limit per year for a TFSA, right? Then you should do that. Now, obviously, you've had your TFSA now for whatever 13, 15, I'm not sure how long TFSA has been around for, maybe 13 or 15 years, something like that. So 5,000 times that many years is your contribution limit if you've never used it. You put a lot more than $5,000 in. But if you put in every year, then this year you can only put in $5,000. So either way, look into it, take advantage. Obviously, I'm not here to really give you stock investing advice. I wouldn't even know where to begin. If you don't know where to begin, but you're hearing me and you're saying, yes, Aaron, I should do that, where do I start? Vanguard, what is it called? VIX, I think. It's the Vanguard. Oh my goodness, what is the name for it? It's not a market fund. It is index fund. Vanguard Index Fund, VIX, is one of the most popularly traded index funds. It indexes the, I think it's either the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ, one of the two. It'll just get you stock market performance, which will not be as good as if you know how to pick the right companies and blah, blah, blah. But that's like 7 to 10% per year. And then this current period right here, that might be more like 15 to 20% for the next year or two, or at least as we bounce back. So start there and do some research on that, and get to work. And obviously, with the real estate, the market has been, interesting. Obviously, people are very concerned about interest rates and there's a lot of factors, right? They're going into a lot of market uncertainty right now. And it is when people are uncertain, that's when you need to be certain and take the lead, right? And you've seen this. Oh my God, like, have you ever been in a social situation where nobody really knows what's going on? So you just make it up, just go with it, just take the lead. If you've never done that, try it sometime. The next time you're in a social situation where it's like nobody knows what's going on, just confidently step forward and be like, this is what's going on. Most people will follow you. It's amazing. It really is. And that's it. Sometimes you need some irrational confidence, to take action, because life is about taking action. And sometimes, the mental part of us can get bogged down thinking what if and woulda, coulda, shoulda, and sometimes you gotta take that step, right? So thank you for your time. I can't believe it's 11 already. It's been a fantastic week for me. I hope it was for you as well, and I hope that this next week going forward is also really good for you and yours and your family. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you again next week. If you've got any questions, now's the time. No problem, Sean. Thanks for joining me. Oh, no, no questions. Okay. In the stream.